Okay. Time is 6:30. I'll call the Newcastle Planning Board meeting of July 18th, 2024 to order. Second on the agenda was election of chair and vice chair. We are unfortunately down a member tonight, so I think we're going to, without objection from either of you, postpone that till we have all of us here.
Do you want to adopt the schedule?
Oh, that's a great idea. Sure.
I mean, it
Yeah.
hopefully will be straightforward.
All right, so that second item was the 2024-2025 meeting schedule. And I closed my tab.
It's all the third Thursday. The two questions I had were actually the third Thursday in Thanksgiving works. It's the 21st. Thanksgiving's the 28th, so that shouldn't be an issue.
Okay.
And then June 19th is Juneteenth. So we could do it the second Thursday in June, and that actually
Lines up better.
would be, it would be 4 weeks after the May meeting and then 5 weeks before the July meeting,
Yeah.
So would you like to do June 12th rather than 19th?
The schedule looks good right now.
Yeah.
It's a little ways out. So.
From a year out, looks great.
Looks just great.
And this is just like, I'll put this in the paper, whatever's adopted, and we'll put it on the website, and we'll notice it and all that. And this will just be the regular schedule. We always change it. And then if there's special meetings, we just add, but at least we can kind of use this.
And it's only changed because of a holiday, which I think most people expect, so.
Yeah.
That's good. Do you want us to
Yeah. If we
take action on that?
Yeah, that would be great.
Accept it.
Great, thank you.
Second,
Any more discussion? All in favor? 3-0.
Kevin and Wanda second.
Okay, so our minutes are still being prepared. We'll bounce that to next meeting as well. New business. We have the first item on the agenda has been also requested by the applicant to bump it to next meeting.
The one thing I did want to discuss on that, if we can, is whether it's complete.
Okay.
Just because I don't think it is right now.
Okay. Excuse me.
And essentially what I'm hopefully working towards is, and I shared this application worksheet with you all before. I think I included it in, the application guidance worksheet.
Yeah.
And I think for a large project plan.
Are you going to be referring to your finding of facts and conclusions of law?
Yeah, so because I went through that, and this is what I based it off of, was this list of complete application requirements, which has not been adopted by the board as policy, or isn't available to the public. But I think I shared an email with you that I had sent to Xander in March, basically, and said, this is what I would think the board's going to need for a complete application, to consider something complete. And I won't go through everything, but I said basically an application form, a deed, some other display of right title or standing before the board, letter from GSB regarding water and sewer, if it's applicable, proof of public notice, that's when we have the public hearing, and then a site plan of the existing conditions, site plan of the proposed conditions, and there's a number of things that fall under there, and then building plans and an overview basically of how he's met whatever the standards are that are in the I think that's so. Actually, and then before I jump to the next, under the site plan proposed, I laid out And some of this is, it depends on the applicant, but for the most part, you're gonna need a lighting plan if you're proposing any lighting. Circulation plan, which at the very least would be sidewalks. Then if you have any vehicular parking plan, if you're doing any parking, you need an erosion control plan according to the erosion control ordinance. But there are some exceptions, but it's if you're doing something very small, landscaping plan, which really is just what's going to be on the ground cover. Your parking plan kind of can go into that. So some of these things can be separated. What I tried to explain to him and what I think I put on this guidance form is you can combine everything. It just, if it gets muddy and the information gets lost on there, then the planning board might say, like, you need to give us information we can digest. So anyway, that's what I sent. I think in the draft findings of fact in this, the application form was turned in, proof of standing. There's several deeds, which to me looked like they were reasonable. We do have a letter from GSB. It is for possibly a different project and was dated from October of last year. So we probably need to get an updated one of those. Looking at that letter, is that reasonable? Because another thing I should say is I can provide guidance to applicants, but I can't tell them, no, that's, like that this is not complete. The planning board, that decision power rests with the planning board. And so that's why I'm kind of have this conversation and just see if my initial reaction is, aligns with you all. So seeing a letter from GSB from 9 months ago for a project that may have changed to me seems like it doesn't really make sense. Especially since I think it's for an 18-unit apartment building versus, I'm not sure if this was 18 or 16. Public notice, it hasn't been submitted, but my thinking was you can waive that until we actually are like, yes, we need to schedule a public hearing. There's not really a site plan of existing conditions. There is I noted there was a 3D visualization. The site plan, it's kind of a mix of the existing and proposed buildings, so it's not totally clear what's current and what's not, or what's existing and what's not. We didn't, as far as a proposed site plan, I didn't get a proposed landscape. I didn't get a landscape plan at all. There's no lighting plan. I did talk to Xander today, and he mentioned he seems to think he submitted something that does have like lumen levels and I think it was the color of lights, but I didn't see any kind of standard lighting. So it's possible that, well, if I don't have it, you don't have it, then you don't have it. But it seems like there might be some confusion there. But I didn't get a lighting plan. There was like an elevation that showed, I think, like the location of some lights on the porches or the decks that are proposed to be on this, but it doesn't show anything about light levels or things like that. So that wouldn't seem to apply. The circulation plan, there's really not a whole lot of information on what they said was the circulation plan. Yes, it shows a path, but I would think we would need dimensions and, maybe not necessarily material, but it's like, yes, this is how wide the paved area is going to be. This is where the sidewalks are going to be. If there's a entrance and exit, then you're going to need to show that as well. There was some description given, but it didn't seem like that was enough. Parking plan, again, weren't dimensions or anything showing, it didn't seem like it was drawn to scale. So it was like, yes, there's 8 parking spaces, but again, not really a detail. The erosion control plan, it's there. I have to look at the erosion control ordinance to just confirm. I think it requires like a written explanation of like what you're gonna do. It's something that at some point we may want to move to more of like a code enforcement, and it's more of a construction issue, like during construction, making sure that the erosion control is there. Because the planning board can look at it, and planning board's really more like, what are you gonna build? Does it meet the code, rather than
Mhm.
your construction methods? And then the last thing was the archaeological survey. It doesn't seem like we need. There's nothing that we would need, so I don't think that that's necessarily required.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's all of that. Hopefully you have gone through it. My reading of it is basically it's not a complete plan. There's not a complete application. But again, it's your decision. That's what I put in here in the draft finding of fact.
Mhm.
Thoughts, concerns?
Well, the biggest thing I guess I'd touch on is that what I guess I would call the site plan page. It was just totally lacking in any dimensions. So we can't review a site plan for things like setbacks and width of driveway and parking lot, and got a virtual lot line in there, but there's no setbacks drawn at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So can't review it, can't approve it, until we have those dimensions on there.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be to scale. It doesn't have to be professional.
Right.
It just has to say like, this is where it's going to be, so that when it goes in the file and then you build it, the code enforcement officer can go out and actually measure it and say, yeah, you did what you said you would do.
And I think, and we talked about this a little bit, and when Peter gets here, maybe we can kind of jump into it more. We don't have to actually take any official action. I think the normal process that we're trying to get to is we get an application in, we see if there's any conflicts, and then go into, is it complete? And then do the review. And I think part of this is the complete thing, whether it's a complete application is kind of separate from it meets the standards, or even that we have enough information to determine whether it meets the standards. So it's like, do we have a site plan? Yes, it's kind of like from afar, do we have everything that we need? And then, and is it worth basically the planning board's time to dive into, to look at and say, okay, did you provide all the dimensions? Because once we start, if you find that like, oh, you're missing a dimension here or there, what you say to the applicant is basically like, look, it's the applicant's responsibility. The burden's on them to prove that they meet the standard. And so if they don't have all the information, planning board basically has to say, look, we can't confirm that you've met the standard. We're not saying that it doesn't. It's just, unless we can confirm it, we can't really approve it.
Right.
So if you have a site plan, great. The next, that means, yeah, okay, it's complete. You got a site plan and all of everything else. Then once we dig into it, you need to make sure if there are details that are missing, you can always ask for those. So it's like a much lower bar to say you have a complete application than it is to say the end of this, we've got all the information you need to approve it. So that's where it kind of gets gray.
Okay, I think because we've got a conversation with our attorney about this process, so that we all understand a little bit better. Can we, I suggest that we table this until after that conversation?
Yeah.
And then we can come back to it. So without objection, I'll just table 4A until after 5A.
Okay.
That work?
That's fine. Yeah, I just wrote down tabling it.
Okay. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you for all that.
Yeah, and I apologize that we dove into it. It's like I have to try and get all of this stuff ready and do reviews, because I'd never know. Like, if you all like, no, this is complete, and let's review it, then I need to
Be ready.
So
Yes. Yep. No, it's good. Good.
trying to get there.
All right. So I think we'll move to new business 4B. map 004, lot 084. Excuse me if I say the name wrong. Ubroy. Thank you very much. On Lewis Hill Road for a pre-submittal meeting for a subdivision application. Do you want to come up? Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
And I'll
Welcome.
just say I shared well, I probably, what I sent in my email to you is I shared your site plan and the letter that you submitted. So I don't know if you want to give an overview or explanation.
Yeah, I think, why don't you just give us a brief description? I mean, we've all read the stuff, but give us a brief description so that people watching can.
First of all, thanks for having me tonight and making time on the agenda. This property's been in our family for close to 70 years, I think. My mom was trustee of the estate, and she had hoped that, someday it would be, worth something that would benefit future generations. And we have a bunch of future generations now, 20 somethings.
Right.
And so I'm sort of the environment right now, I think is, would benefit the community, and there's some demand for that as well right now for some building lots. So we just thought this would be a good time to try to do this. We've been, I think, trying to be as proactive about doing some groundwork for it now. Gartney and Dorsky has been helping us. And had a couple of questions I wanted to get some feedback on in our approach, and also wanted to make sure I have a good understanding of what you guys will need when we put together the formal application.
Great. Well, since this is just an informal meeting anyway, it's really just to kind of help applicants identify areas before they submit their application that might need just looking at, a little more attention, or just stuff that may come up. You don't want to get to the application phase and then be like, oh, we don't have everything we need, and then it's another month, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So why don't we just dive in? You said you have some questions. Fire away, I'd say.
I think the first, Michael and I talked a little bit about this. We had George Chase come and do a site visit with us a few weeks ago. David Starr from Gartney and Dorsky and myself. And the main purpose of that was to get his feedback on our approach to do a shared entrance for every pair of lots.
Mm-hmm.
And the proposal was we would have 8 lots, so there'd be 4 shared entrances, reducing the number of driveways off of Lewis Hill Road.
Yep.
And he seemed to think that would be an acceptable approach. And we think it's a nice plan. Michael mentioned that he had some uncertainty whether or not that approach could be done for a pair of lots versus needing to serve 3 lots. So I just wanted to sort of inquire about that. David Starr from Gartney and Dorsky said he had just done the same thing for a pair of lots sharing an entrance in Newcastle somewhere. So he thought that it was a doable approach.
Yeah, so the question that I have is not, after going through the ordinance and looking at some of the definitions, still not really clear to me what the ordinance says. I think there's some gray area. The question is about frontage. Is when you look at the properties, the proposed division, do they have enough frontage according to the ordinance? So I believe the minimum is 250 feet of road frontage in the rural zone.
Yes.
But your lot can be as little as 100 feet wide. So that's if, so my assumption is the only way that you really get to that is if you have frontage along two different roads.
Nope. We wrote it that way on purpose because if you go to places like Stonebridge Circle, you go down, several of the lots around in the center basically of the large circle at the end. It's the same road, but it curves around. So the lot width itself can be 100, and the road frontage curves along essentially 2 or 3 sides of the property.
Right.
And so as long as it's the same road, you can get 250 feet along that same road, even though the width of the lot is maybe only 100 feet.
Well, and I was thinking if you had a corner lot,
Well, that would work too.
then,
No, because it'd be 2 different roads.
okay, so the frontage measurement has to be one road.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is,
Because it says primary frontage.
is that, okay, that then does make,
If it was, if the ordinance said like, frontage requirements could be an aggregate of primary and secondary frontages. That would mean you could add secondary frontages to your primary frontages to meet the requirement.
and then primary frontage. Okay.
I see. So you were kind of hoping that the 200, because each of these lots is about 200 feet wide.
Correct.
So
And
you're
then-
hoping to add the 50 feet of the right of way to the 200 feet
Correct.
to get the 250 feet.
Another way we had looked at it initially was instead of having the frontage on Lewis Hill Road, do the shared entrance 250 feet in.
Yep.
And using that as the primary frontage.
You could do that.
And the third lot issue isn't an issue.
Yeah, so that was the other thing, that was one of the things I thought was. If you have a way.
Yeah.
Whether it's a driveway or a road, or if it only serves two.
Yeah.
You know, even then 2 properties, then it's a drive.
Yep.
And once it switches over to serving 3 or more lots. Now it's a private road, assuming that it's not owned by the town.
Are you talking about, are you looking from the driveways, roads and entrances ordinance?
Well, yes, and no, at somewhere. 'Cause, right, right now, like the driveways, roads and entrances ordinance just calls it driveway vehicular access serving 2 single-family dwelling units or 1 2-family dwelling or less. And my assumption is once you go above that, now it becomes a road.
But it'd be a private road.
Be private, yeah, which is fine.
Right.
And so that's where I wasn't sure if it's just serving 2 lots. Is it a road or is it a driveway?
Well, so the interesting thing is, my understanding is that we don't peg it on lots. It's locked to units,
Right.
because you can have multiple now. Under our ordinance, any lot in rural can technically have 3 units on. Like minimum,
Yeah, I think you can have more as long
you
as
can have
plumbing.
one, right? There's options, but what I'm saying is like. That's 3 units, so I think we locked it to units in terms of what the driveway could service. Because that's an indicator of how much traffic is going to be both on that driveway and exiting onto a public way. So,
So if there's a lot that does not have any units on it. It's dry.
yeah, it can be considered a driveway. And it's not until that 3rd unit goes in that then it becomes the issue where, okay, now you've reached, because that 3rd unit could mean that there are 6 to 9 cars,
Sure.
right? Potentially, it may only mean 3.
Yeah.
But it could be 6 to 9,
Yeah.
right? So when you hit that 3rd unit, it means that the standards for how the road is both constructed and size, width, requirements for the road bed have to be elevated so that it's not just a pathway. It has to be able to allow emergency vehicles to get down there without hindrance.
Which that makes sense, that basically, once it gets the usage based on number of units, you have to build to another, higher standard than your driveway.
Yeah.
The question that I'm having is, can you count your driveway as frontage?
It's not
Yeah.
primary,
It can be.
it's a driveway.
If it's
I didn't think that's
less than
what,
3 units. Absolutely. If it's less than 3 units
okay, but what
and it's
happens,
250 feet long,
but what happens when he does that? And it's 200 feet, he has that's 2 units. But then people decide they want to put more units on the lots.
the road has to be then upgraded. So, I mean, these are the reasons we have these meetings. And basically what I'm saying is, if you think that there are going to be more than 3 units, if you want to punch in what would be a driveway or a private road to get that 250 feet to serve lot 1 and lot 2, right? A driveway would come off of what would then become a private road. If the number of units is going to exceed 2, build it to the standard of a private road. Now,
Well, but I'm wondering, basically with this plan, the way that it is, as long as you can have 100 feet along the public road or private, it doesn't really matter, 100 feet there, assuming we're talking about rectangles, 100 feet there,
yeah,
and then you have a 250-foot long driveway that, goes in, basically at the property line where they meet.
Yeah.
And that counts, and that's enough frontage.
that's enough frontage. So
But I
I know,
I'm going back to,
I know.
how do we keep rural?
Yeah.
And we did that with a 250-foot road frontage.
Yeah, and the compromise was to
But
allow,
if you allow that,
no. That was the compromise. It was prior to that, you're not wrong. You remember what I remember, which is actually from the character code draft,
yes,
which is that driveways were not allowed to be counted as frontage.
we allowed them to use them to get to a back lot.
Correct, right. The compromise was, okay, we're gonna put that 250 feet as the minimum primary
To
frontage
save the character of rural,
and allow driveways to become frontable.
but then that changes rural.
Well,
'Cause
not
it's
really.
Because
I
it's
mean,
not 250 feet of road frontage. So now you could have a house every 100 feet, which is what we didn't want.
wait,
It
what?
was the driveway every 100 feet is I thought what we were trying to avoid.
Right, well, whatever, yeah.
Yeah. And, I mean, in this case, you're talking about a driveway every 400
Right, if you only
Yeah.
use 1 for 2.
because the driveway is serving both lots, so it sort of meets that preserving that rural character.
Right,
So does
Otherwise,
the,
you'd have more density of driveways all the way down.
if you did.
yeah,
one
you
on
did
every
one
Yeah.
for each
Yeah.
lot, 8 driveways.
Right, so this is definitely better in that respect.
Yep.
So then is the frontage zone relative to the driveway?
Yes,
You would
So
have to-
now, I mean, we don't require in rural that the house is
No.
the front.
correct.
But would they
But
have
in
to be in
terms of
250 feet before that driveway branched off to be,
Setbacks.
no, it wouldn't have to, as long as they got. The road would have to be 250 feet long.
It would have to be 250 feet long.
What we have been going on is that the easement would be, the shared easement would be 250 feet. And wherever it was convenient for them to branch into their lot on there is where they do that.
I think you'd have to
Then you'd have to build a private road.
have the road be 250 feet. So why would you branch off at 100 feet if you've got another 150 feet beyond that? Because
Well,
eventually that's just gonna grass in.
because your house is gonna be, not gonna be 250 feet down the lot. It's gonna be up.
Yeah.
But
like
you never know. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the thing, right? Because we're allowing more units to be built on every lot. Especially in rural. And we don't know where they'll be built. They can be built anywhere else.
If it's a through road, then you'd be able to build, I mean, I guess go over, it would be like your regular road frontage.
Yeah,
But where you're building just a driveway that's 250 feet long, you kind of got to go to the end of that to branch off, I would think.
No.
Because if you don't
Well-
use the 250, the whole 250 feet, eventually that isn't going to become, I mean, it'll still be there, but
It's gonna
not
be
gonna be used.
natural and rather than having a road, you're gonna have a natural space. It's still gonna be,
well, if that's the case, why would you?
It's
build
gonna
over
be a-
250 feet?
it's
Well-
gonna be a deeded right of way.
And that's the thing is I think is that it, to be considered that way, it has to be a deeded right of way. It's reserving that minimum amount of length, 250 feet. Now you can put the driveway, because we don't specify. You can put that driveway, my understanding is you can put the driveway anywhere along that 250 feet that you want, but you can't. You can build at the end of it, you can build in the middle of it, but you have to have that 250 foot in order for it to be considered your primary frontage, which means it has to be deeded.
but so I'm just looking through some of these definitions and I'll just read through them because I think that the logic doesn't allow, well,
Where are you?
in the core zoning code with primary, frontage line primary is
What page?
this is 103. So frontage line primary is the property line along the primary frontage. So if you go to frontage primary frontage is the frontage that abuts the primary road, or if there is no road, the frontage that abuts the civic space, right of way or easement.
Right.
But there is a road, so my assumption is that the frontage is the frontage that abuts the primary road. But what is a primary road? So there, road primary. Road primary, okay, in determining the primary road for corner lots, through lots, or any lot that abuts more than one road. The primary road is designated to be the one. The road,
One of
Through
the
lots.
following conditions, yeah.
yeah, following conditions, right? The road that existed first, the widest road that carries the greatest amount of traffic. When a lot fronts on more than one road. And multiple roads meet the above criteria, all roads shall be treated as primary roads, but my reading of that is like. The driveway. Wouldn't be the primary.
Hmm.
Which, so you would kind of have to measure from what the road is that's existing right now as that, so that needs to be 250. And so my original question was, can you count that easement towards the 250? But no, it has to be all along one.
Yeah,
But now it's like just from reading this, it looks like you need 250 along essentially whatever road existed first, unless you're building a new bigger
Or
road.
wider.
and where that might, hold on a second, Peter, where that might, the driveway as frontage kick in as if you're building into the interior of a lot and creating a driveway and a lot or a series of lots
Beyond.
that would have no primary frontage on an existing road,
It would become their primary because it's their only road.
because it's their only road.
And that's where we changed that because we wanted people to get to the back lot.
Correct, yes, exactly.
But that's not what this is trying to do.
No, because we've got the primary frontage on Lewis Hill, that would be the primary frontage, unless you were to build another road that goes vertically through it, for example, right?
Through all.
Peter, go ahead.
So if you go to page 10 of the Port Zone Code. It states all newly created lots must abut a public road or private road which conforms to the Newcastle driveway road and entrance ordinance. I think that's saying that it can't be a driveway that you use for road frontage.
So,
So
right, and that's where I'm like, well, it does say a road.
So what you'd have to do, I think, is you'd have to build a 250-foot long private road, standard road to access those two lots, if there isn't sufficient road frontage on the public road.
So it would have to be up to the standards of the
Yeah.
regular road. Yeah, I agree.
No, a private road, not a public.
No,
Private-
I mean, no,
private-
private, but still the road that's there.
But even still, that wouldn't be the primary. That,
That might not be the primary frontage,
yeah,
but it would get you the road frontage. But it would have to be built the entire length. It couldn't just be an easement. Because it's defined as a private road, not an easement,
right.
right?
And so, so that,
So it'd have to be built as wide and to the same standards as the road that's there, as Lewis Hill.
Yeah, I would say that's correct.
yeah, or wider, I would think.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's got to at least meet the same standard.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't.
Because it's not
qualify
gonna be
because-
busier. Right, I mean, I'm just thinking about the definition in the core zoning code of primary road. I think it's
So
on-
I think the driveways, are whatever comes off that private road.
Yeah,
And so assuming those driveways could be shared, right? You could have, let's say 4 lots with 2 shared driveways.
Yeah.
But that would not get you your road frontage without having the private road that's in the.
right, and even if you built that private road off of Lewis Hill, even if that was 300 feet, I still don't see how that gets to be the primary frontage that you are considering. You're basing that 250 measure.
But I think it does give you that road frontage. And it would probably be that if you're a far enough distance in, I can't remember, I know this isn't a regulation somewhere, but if you're a far enough distance in, the private road becomes your primary frontage.
Uh-huh.
I think it's like 100 feet or something.
Just splitting, there's like 125 feet on Lewis Hill Road. And then it bends, so I understand you right, not to get involved, but there's 125 feet of Lewis Hill Road.
Oh, I see
And
what
then
you're
there's
saying.
125 feet that they build the road in.
Mhm.
I mean, is there splitting the map or no?
No,
That's what I thought.
no
I
splitting the
wanted to
map.
check.
It's 250, 250,
I think
Correct.
either has to be 250 on the private or 250 on the public.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Even with what it says about primary road and the primary frontage has to be on the primary road. The primary road is
Isn't primary frontage for the orientation of the building?
There is no orientation in rural.
Oh, right.
let me, yeah, because let's just make sure. Rural says the primary frontage line length, so the primary frontage line. Primary front- Lot line, C lot line, primary front, okay. Lot line. Primary front. Lot line lines that abuts the primary roads. And so then that takes you back to road primary, which is the, we'll say busier. one,
Yeah,
whatever.
all right, I'm gonna completely walk back and say I'm wrong. And Wanda, you are right.
Once in my life.
Well, I think.
You cannot front on a driveway.
The intention may have been what you said.
I think it
but I'm
was.
not sure if it got.
It didn't make it through.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the intent, but it did not make it through.
I think what you were talking about is when we were trying to split a back lot.
Yeah.
To get a second unit into a back,
Mhm.
then we could use,
Driveways as
driveway.
frontage.
but not as a primary house.
So with this. With this piece of property, and I don't want to try and, troubleshoot too much, but I'm just looking and. So basically. If you're going to try and cut it like piano keys. That is the kind of what's proposed here.
Yeah.
So the narrowest it's gonna be is 250 feet along Lewis Hill Road.
Yeah,
But there really isn't any lot dimension or anything that's back. So if you were to put a road back in there, if you could get 250 feet along that private road, and it doesn't front on Lewis Hill, you could have a lot that only fronts on the newly created road.
Yes,
That you could do. So
yes,
you kind of, so that is one way. You've got enough space, so you might be able to play with that. Where you need 250 feet along Lewis Hill, but then you can create basically back lots as long as they have 250 feet of frontage along a
We
private
were
road.
trying to prevent what they did up north with the spaghetti lots.
Right,
A lot of those properties, they just cut up and went narrow right back into the woods, and so you had this really, that's what we were trying to.
Yeah.
Well, you can't do, by state statute, you can't do more than 1 in 5
Right, yeah, now it's.
now. Yeah.
now, yeah.
So you
A
have
lot
to
of
do
Newcastle's cut up into spaghetti lots,
Oh, really?
pre-existing.
pre-existing,
Yeah.
yeah, we can't make new ones.
so you're gonna have to go and play with geometry.
Well, I don't, the lot yield, to look at back lots.
How
But-
deep are these on here?
It goes quite a ways back, but it drops off quite a bit. That's why we didn't want to do that. It would be very expensive versus the lots that you get for it.
Right.
Yeah, and you've got the CMP right away there, you can't.
Yeah.
Encroach on, you can go right up to it, but you can't do anything.
You couldn't cross it.
Oh, you can get a crossing,
Well, yeah, but there's,
but it's
It's gonna
tricky,
be hard.
there's no value.
right? Yeah, 8640. I was just looking at the topo number.
So you're, I mean, to make them all 250, it looks like you go from 8 lots to 6,
Yeah,
Correct.
right?
Unless you redesign the subdivision to include a subdivision road into the interior. And then like Michael said, you might be able to get,
Yeah, but
Well, that's what I was saying. It sounds like,
we've kind of looked at that.
Yeah.
yeah,
Those lots are like along right of way. They're sort of,
yeah.
those lots become mostly CMP right of way.
Yeah.
okay,
The only other thing, I mean, beyond this conversation, what it ties into this conversation, I noticed your lot sizes that you got listed here range from 2.7 acres in size to 4.5 acres in size, and maybe this will be cleared up if it gets reworked, goes from 8 to 6 lots, if that's what you decide you want to do. But the 5 acres is kind of a magic number in Newcastle. If you have a lot that's 5 acres or bigger, you can tap into more things. You can do a building group, which
Yeah.
allows you to do
more units.
more units and different uses.
going and do more houses.
You could do other commercial things. You could have more dwelling units. And if that was ever for something for the future or for sale value, I think there's value there in being able to say I got 5 acres or more, and therefore that allows me to do more things. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that is. They're building groups. That is, and that starts on page 54. I would look at that and see.
Yeah, because I mean, just in terms of like listed uses, even, right? We go look at page 13 is the use table for rural. All those circles with the star are allowed in a building group, but not otherwise.
That
So-
kind of gets away from the whole desire to have a rural lot.
Housing.
Well, this was the compromise. We were told,
And you are fairly close to town, so there might be some, value in having more options on a lot than just a house. Where you are closer to town.
I'm gonna try and think on this too, but I think the unfortunate reality is after looking at this code, the way that you've got the lots laid out doesn't work like this. So you can have less lots if you want to continue with this kind of concept, but
In your narrative that you wrote for us, you said that you were planning on selling two of the lots, or they were gonna go to family members or something?
No, we didn't wanna just rush in and try to sell it.
Do everything.
Yeah.
So it was like two this year, maybe two next year, or something, a couple of years or something like that.
Correct.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, actually, I don't know whose idea it was, but I love the idea of the shared driveways. Obviously, that's awesome. It reduces the number of driveways off of Lewis Hill Road.
Well, I
yeah.
don't really have any questions. Unless you guys have any of me.
I think those are really the only two. The two things, the only other thing I just wanted to touch on was anything else that we might just mention that should be included with the application for subdivision specific. In that context.
Well, I did, when we met, I did point you in the direction of the back of the code, the subdivision under administration, Article 7, subdivision approval standards, which is Article 7, Section 12, subsection F. Just approval standards. I mean, it's just all the stuff to consider. Some of it's, I just see something about spaghetti lots, but it gets into stormwater and all of this.
Is
just
that
pick
what?
those
It's like
roads.
A through, I don't remember. A through U.
Yeah, it seemed to me like a lot of those don't.
Probably
really
would not.
apply.
If they don't
Yeah.
apply, just, in the application, just say not applicable. If it's borderline and you think it's not applicable, give us a reason why you think it's not applicable.
Mhm.
But
But you've gone through those, it sounds like.
Yeah,
Look through all of that.
I
Yeah.
read all through it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thought
But
about the
any
ones-
huge lot that you divide more than 3 and 5 years,
Yeah,
that's 15 subdivision.
yeah, it goes through subdivision.
So if he's thinking about doing 2 this year, 2 next year, then.
Yes.
you're
And we
already
had
giving-
that conversation and I basically what I said, this lot, from what I understand, hasn't been divided in more than 5 years. So I said, you can cut off a lot, sell it. You're not in subdivision. It's once you sell that, once you create another lot, then, you go into subdivision. So
That does remind me of a quick question.
Yeah.
Say I opted to just do one lot right now.
Yeah.
Would I be shooting myself in the foot if say I redesign this so it's lot 1 to 6, so it's all frontage on Lewis Hill Road, and I decide I have somebody that wants to buy lot 2.
Mhm.
And then now it's not a contiguous piece. Lot 1 is separated from lot 3, 4, 5, and 6. Does that cause me any problems?
my understanding, and there's an attorney here who may be able to weigh in. My understanding is if you have a lot and you sell the middle part, you've essentially created 3 lots. And so now that would trigger subdivision. But this is something that
Unless it's like a U.
right, but if lot 1 and 3 are physically disconnected, it's not one lot.
Yep. Worked through it. So,
yeah,
you
I
have
mean,
to-
the way to think about it is if you've got a lot, you can draw one line
So one
to
side or
create
the
2
other.
lots.
Yeah.
The second line you draw, essentially, you're in subdivision.
So if you want to do that, you'd want to sell lot 1 or 3 first, because then you haven't created the other 2. I mean, you
Lot
don't,
one.
you want to basically sell one at the end.
6.
Yeah, sell one at the end, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
1 or 6.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank
Do you have
you.
any other questions or?
Nothing that comes to mind right now.
Great. Well, love that you're thinking about it. Love that you're planning ahead. Honestly, we love getting this, having this conversation.
We love new people in Newcastle.
Absolutely
New
too.
building.
But we also love having the conversation about how do I do this correctly before I just go and do it? And then find out I did it wrong.
I
So,
appreciate that.
no, thank you
Yeah.
very
Maybe I'll
much.
come see you
Yeah,
next Tuesday.
I'm out of town for the next 2 weeks. But yes, I mean, after that, I'd be more than happy to sit
Are
down.
you available for a call tomorrow?
I can be in the afternoon. I can be. Why don't I'll shoot you an email and we'll find a time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
All right. All right, so we're on to other business. Item A, conversation regarding application submission. So this is why I asked you to come to this meeting, and I'm gonna pop to the restroom while Michael tees it up.
Sure. So we have been working on getting the process, the procedure down for application comes in, all of that. Some of it, right now, what we have started doing is application comes in. Obviously, I look it over to see if it's complete. I put together this complete application requirements, depending on whether it's a small application, large application, subdivision. There's, depending on the application, there's different things that we know we need. So when best case scenario, I get an application, looks complete, I go do my review, I bring it to the planning board, and the planning board, the second step is we deem it complete, or, the planning board says, yes, it's complete.
Yeah.
Which I'll give you this. Yeah. Look at it.
Sure.
And determine that it's complete and then start doing the review. And so far, we haven't had any issue where there's been something that's come to the planning board, we've looked at it and said, no, this isn't complete. And so we're in this awkward situation of like, well, we need to review it, but we don't have a complete application. But either way, what do we need to consider for determining when it's complete? My understanding is essentially, and I think we had this conversation before you were here, is just, if we can get a site plan, it doesn't have to have all of the information on it. We just need to say, yes, this is a site plan. Yes, this is a lighting plan. Yes, this is a landscaping plan. And say, yes, we've got all of these things. Now it's, worth the board's time to dive into, if someone puts an application and it doesn't have the lighting plan. So like, no, until you get the lighting plan to us, we're not going to take it to the board. Board's not going to take it up. Once we have all of that stuff, board digs into it. And even if they say, oh, you know what, you didn't address the, there's no numbers in this area, so you need to provide us more information. We can always ask for that, but that doesn't mean it's incomplete if, there's not setback dimensions on the site plan necessarily. That would be maybe a big thing.
No, actually, I would say it's incomplete. So
You would
if you look
say?
at the, I would say that.
You would say.
If you look at the legal standard about how this works, right? Kind of the CEO or the planner's job is to try to get the applicant, so that they at least have something on every performance standard. Right? It might not be enough, but it would be something, right? So I always take an extreme use of like a lead smelter, right? So a lead smelter might say, yeah, I'm going to locate in this zone. I meet the 10-acre requirement for an industrial use in Newcastle. As to healthful conditions, the factory will not emit lead oxide, right? That's all it says, right? That is technically enough to submit it to the planning board. But the planning board has the discretion to say, this is an incomplete application because you haven't stated what kind of controls you're going to use to prevent pollution. And so we're not ruling it as a complete application. We won't do a substantive review until you provide that information in your application. Right? And so the craziest one of these I ever saw was what's now the Standard building, the big red building in town. They ruled that application complete and then went through 9 months of substantive review, adding and, you know, changing stuff all the way along. That's not really how it's supposed to work. The way it's supposed to work is you want to see substantial proof on every single condition.
Mhm.
And then that substantial proof allows the substantive review. So when that takes place, when you say, okay, yeah, we have enough information on each of these standards, and now we're going to take a substantive review of the application and decide if it meets the standards. You've essentially provided some proof, right? And we're going to say whether we think the proof is enough. Okay, so they're kind of two steps that way.
Mhm.
They're kind of two steps that way.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
interrupt you
Yeah,
real
go
quick.
ahead, go ahead.
Does the CEO and the town planner have the authority to determine completeness?
No, it's a vote of the planning board. Every single application, every single time.
So even though I take, we've just built a garage.
Yep.
When I took the application into Georgia, I had to put,
Oh, well, okay, so if you have a application that is a CEO only application,
okay.
then they have the right to do completeness. I thought we were talking more like
No,
new
no,
lots
we are,
or site plan.
yeah,
Okay,
but I'm
yeah.
just thinking from my own personal experience. When I take an application into George, and just like you said before, you've got to have the setbacks, they got to know you have enough right of way, all that. Or he's going to kick it back. So when we get one that's to us, like you said, none of that's on there. There's no measurements
Mhm.
I can see. But we still have, that still can come to us and we have to kick it back at that point.
Correct,
That's not something Michael or George could do,
correct.
even though it's obviously not complete.
Well, I mean, they could say, I think you want to add this,
Oh,
but if you want to submit it as is, go ahead.
okay.
Right? I mean, they're there to help as much as technically as much as they want. They don't have to help the applicant if they don't want to. I don't, my advice for the CEO and the planner would always be not, to never say something like, oh, that'll be approved. Right? You never want to do that, but I'm saying, the last time they had a, fish processing plant, they wanted exactly what was going to happen with the fish guts and stuff after they're processed. Where is that going? Right. And that's a case in South Bristol that I had years and years ago. But they poisoned one person's well. And so the next fish processing plant that showed up that wanted to do it, they had to have a whole composting plan and all that stuff before they would even consider, whether or not the site plan application could be approved. Not whether it could be approved actually, but whether it could be considered for approval, right? Because that was what they wanted for completeness.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about like the relative time frame.
Sure.
So applicant comes,
Yep.
submits an application to the town, it's stamped with a date.
Yeah.
At that time. Received.
Sure.
Right. What does that mean?
That just means they've put it in to be considered by the planning board. If the planning board wants to look at it and determine completeness, they can do that. If the CEO or planner says, hey, would you like me to look at your application and discuss it with you a bit, they might intervene and say, you probably want to change this before this deadline for the planning board because you're going to have stuff to do. They don't have to do that. It's purely discretionary.
Mhm.
But that date really doesn't mean anything except for when you're going to look at it and determine completeness. So you can determine completeness or determine that it's not complete and kick it back and say, yeah, it's not complete. Now, if the applicant were to decide that the board was wrong about that, right, that they did have a complete application, they could appeal that to the Board of Appeals, and the Board of Appeals would rule on whether or not it was actually a complete application. But it all depends on whether the Board of Appeals is actually going to overrule the planning board on a factual item that the planning board wants to see. I've never seen it done, but it's theoretically possible.
So we're trying to develop this checklist of stuff,
Yep.
which is essentially internal planning board policy.
Mhm.
In the case you just said, where an applicant challenges the completeness determination.
Mhm.
That wouldn't be reviewed under the policy. It'd be reviewed against
Just the
standards of the
ordinance.
code.
Correct. But understand that just like a judge has the right to make factual, determinations. It's a funny thing. I turned 50 and all of a sudden I whistle on every other S. I don't know what's going on. It's like I sound like an old time country miner. I don't know. Anyway, should have like a pickaxe in hand. It's like a Bugs Bunny character. Anyway, the planning board has the right and the responsibility to determine facts. And one of the facts they can determine is this isn't enough or this is enough. The way that this kind of works is the planning board can determine the facts. The Board of Appeals can look at it and potentially overrule it. If they overrule it, it goes back to the planning board for the planning board to reconsider as though that one factual issue is enough. And then they would make, their decision. Like, let's say it's just one issue, right?
Yeah.
If they overrule you on that issue, then you come back and you say, okay, Board of Appeals says this is enough evidence. So we're going to go ahead and analyze the application, and then you're going to decide whether it meets all the standards or not.
Okay.
Okay. The way that it works is if that then fails,
yeah,
it goes back to the Board of Appeals potentially. And then if it fails at the Board of Appeals because they say, hey, look, the planning board determined it with your factual evidence, and they said, no, this doesn't pass. It's not sufficient to see, it has to be substantial enough to make a decision, and it has to be sufficient to meet the standard. Those are the two things that have to happen. So you can have evidence that's substantial, but it might not be sufficient. So if the planning board determines it's not sufficient and the Board of Appeals upholds it, then you can take the whole thing to the Superior Court. Okay, which is why the planning board and the Board of Appeals are actually in the place of judges, right? Because judges can overrule other judges all the way up to the main Supreme Court. So you guys are judicial, right? And so in that judicial role, you make determinations, and the appellate, which is the Board of Appeals, gives you those factual determinations. In the Superior Court, they are actually also going to give the planning board factual discretion, which means that they're only going to overrule the planning board if they think the planning board made a manifest error. No, a manifest error would be, it has to be big. It has to be like, the applicant had substantial evidence that showed that there would be no pollution. And the planning board said, yeah, we don't think you've met the pollution standard. Right. I actually had that case in Brunswick one time. We had an applicant where their only exhaust was nitrogen gas. And I was like, I don't know if that's pollution or not. The EPA doesn't define it as pollution. We lost at the planning board. We lost the Board of Appeals. We went to the Cumberland Superior Court, and my argument was the atmosphere is like 74% nitrogen anyway, so I don't think it's pollution. And they were like, yeah, it's good enough for us. So we won on the pollution standard because it was literally pure nitrogen gas, like elementally pure nitrogen gas. It was not like nitrous oxide or nitrous sulfide or something like that. It was like the chemical process that they were using ended up that they were using super pure stuff for like pharmaceutical production, and the exhaust was exactly, nitrogen. So, so you can't, I mean, there are cases where you get something like that, but it's real hard to find.
Okay, so next question I have is this concept of when an applicant's rights are vested.
Yep.
So when does that happen?
Sure. So an applicant's rights are vested once the application is determined complete and there's been a first substantial or a first substantive review of the application.
By the planning board.
By the planning board.
Right.
Yeah. Well, or it could be if the planner or CEO has the authority to determine completeness.
Okay, right.
And do a substantive review, then it's when they review the application as well, same standard.
So substantive review by the body that can determine that it's
The reviewing.
Right,
authority.
correct. It has to be the body that could commit, could grant the approval.
Okay. But they have to do the review and make a determination.
No,
No, okay,
no. Okay, so let's say they rule it complete.
yeah,
They start looking at the application and they do a substantive review. And after they've voted it complete, they say, we'd really love if you could change the lighting to address the neighbor's concern about light pollution going into the side of their house. What could you do about that? Okay. They say, we'll make some plan amendments and come back. Okay.
rights are not vested.
Their rights are vested
Rights are vested.
because it was determined complete and there was a substantive review. Even if that substantive review did not result in an approval or denial, that first substantive review where they said, okay, now are they meeting the standard of what we want in the ordinance, right? Not is there an element that they have cited that could meet the standard, right? That's completeness. The question is, did it meet the standard?
Okay,
And I know that sounds kind of confusing, but it's like, if you leave your last name off the SAT, you lose 20 points. Okay. First name's 40 points, I think. I think it's 40 or 20 or something like that.
okay.
And it's the same sort of thing where if you haven't answered that at all, it can't be complete. You could have an insufficient answer, like we'll meet whatever standard we think is appropriate. Those are, that could be ruled an incomplete application. But once the board has determined it's complete and then gone through it, that's a substantive review.
So can I just follow that? I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot. Yes, no question. Let's just follow that through to the thought experiment where the ordinance is changing.
Okay.
There's a common perception that I'm gonna land my application on the CEO or the planner's desk or whatever the day before the ordinance
Yeah,
changes
good luck.
to vest my rights.
Doesn't work.
Doesn't work that way from what you're explaining.
No.
You actually have to have gone much further along in the process.
Well, ideally, you would have had at least a planning board meeting where they voted the application as complete. It's the first vote. Right? And then gone through the application with you. That vests your rights in the current regulations.
So now I have a question because my thinking for this whole process was when we get an application that seems complete, comes to the planning board and the planning board says, yeah, great, this is complete. We'll start digging into it. Halfway through, they realize, oh, we need some more information. But you've already said it's complete. So now can you, I guess, does it make sense then to like basically do all of your review and then say, okay, now before we determine that it meets the standard, like, do we want to agree that it's complete? I mean, does it make sense?
Sure, I see what you're saying. Yeah, like, are you basically doing your substantive review before you determine completeness? I don't think that would be fair to the applicant.
Yeah.
What that would mean is you're kind of like saving your ammo, right, for the last shot. I think you're the process that they really want you to follow, or at least the court has laid out, right, is that they want a determination that's complete. And then the board members, for example, can argue over whether they think someone met a particular standard or not.
Right.
Right. And, there will be shaded walkways, right, at the new shopping center, or, any commercial development will have shaded walkways in the parking lot. Okay. Well, what does shaded really mean? Right. And so one guy says, we're going to plant saplings that are a foot tall, and in 20 years, it'll be totally shaded. Right. Is that enough? Or do they have to plant 10-foot high trees that will, you know, are quick growing and will grow up and, you know, shade
But
the
what
whole.
you're saying is that's part of the substantive review.
Correct.
And the fact that they submitted something that addressed shading of walkways.
Correct.
Just checks the box for completeness.
Exactly. Did they check the box in a way that at least passes the straight face test? You know, I mean, if they say, and I've had applicants do this before, you know, people have come to me and they said, like, how do we address this? And I said, well, you want to have an element for, you know, you want to have a response for each element of the performance standards. And they've said, you know, we will shade the walkways. Well, that's nothing. I mean, you can pare it back to the standard,
But it
but it
checks
does
the
check it for
box
completeness
for
potentially.
completeness.
Yeah. I mean, it's within your discretion if that checks the box for completeness.
And once the planning board says, yes, this is complete.
Mhm.
Any limitations on saying we need more information?
No, there isn't. No, you can say, you know, I think the more proper way to say it would be to say, we don't have enough detail to approve this right now
Mhm.
with what you've provided. So we would suggest more. If you really think you need more information, that really should come at the completeness stage.
Mhm.
But if you get into it and you say, yeah, you know, we didn't realize we needed more information, then
Yeah,
you have to, you know, just ask for it at that point. But it really should be, do we have enough to say yes or no? Right? Not is it ambiguous? Right? We will shade the walkways is pretty ambiguous to me. So I would vote against that being a complete response. I would want to see, you know, we're going to shade it with solar panels. We're going to shade it with brightly colored tents. We're going to install 40-foot trees, whatever, you know, whatever they're going to do to shade it. I would want to see an actual, you know, statement about how they're going to accomplish that before I'd vote to have it complete. But the planning board does have discretion to say, and I've seen some planning boards do this, by the way, where they have deliberately said, yeah, we'll judge it complete. And then they go to the substantive review and deny it because the standard is not met with what the applicant had. You know, that happens. You know, they'll say, well, yeah, you had something there, but it does not meet our standard. It's not complete enough, denied. You want to bring back the application, it's another application fee. Bring back the application in another month and we'll look at it then. You know?
Okay.
Yeah, Bar Harbor's famous for that. They pretty much, I don't represent their planning board. I have walked away from representing their Board of Appeals because it's just too far. And there are always moose on the road when I drive home. But I mean, a lot of the time they'll approve or deny that night on what they have in front of them. There's no like, go back and amend it. They're like, denied, come back later. And the more times you come back, you have to pay an application fee each time. So there are towns that are a lot tougher on that.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think a lot should go into the completeness vote. I think everybody should be pretty comfortable that there's at least a response that can, like I said, pass the straight face test of we're actually meeting the standard somehow. You know, won't cause light pollution. You know, CMAP 2 lighting standards. This shows, you know, down lights with 15-foot radiuses. The only lights in the upper parking lot will be down lights. There will be one elevated illuminated light as people walk down the hill. I'm just thinking of Newcastle Public House as an example. Because they never did install their lights up at the top, which actually we should probably make them do, but we haven't done that yet. So mostly because the neighbors ask us not to. So anyway, but the you know, the standard that they have to meet should be that kind of detail if it's site plan, I think.
Mhm. Well, it sounds like you almost have to go through the application in some kind of detail twice. Once to
Yeah, that's
determine
right.
completion, and then again to determine, yes, it's met all the standards.
Yeah, correct. Correct. Yeah, because if it's not complete, I mean, you're basically, you know, effectively what you're doing is denying it.
Mhm.
You know, and saying, come back, but we're not going to charge you another fee.
Yeah, right.
you know?
Yeah.
You're saying come back with more substantial information on 3, 5, and 12. And at that point, we think we can
We
maybe
can say it's
do a substantive review
at
and
least
approve
call
it.
it complete,
Yeah,
and then have the conversation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I have to process some of this.
yeah, I mean, it's not, I mean. My main complaint about the law court is that the law court is almost entirely consumed with former judges, former prosecutors, and former administrative law attorneys from the state bureaucracies. They don't have anyone who's ever done trust and estates. They don't have anyone who's done real estate law. They don't have anyone who's done municipal law. And that's crazy to me because we're the, you know, those are the areas that impact everybody. Almost everybody's got a will. Almost everybody's going to own property. Almost everybody's going to have to do something in front of a town at some point or another. And those are completely unrepresented on the law court. So the law court makes a lot of decisions where you're kind of like, you guys ever thought about this before? And the answer is often no. But that's the current state of the law.
You're right.
One final question for me, unless anyone else has. In making a motion to either approve completeness or not or whatever, must a reason be given?
No. However, the gold standard, if you want to go, like, if you want to basically prepare it, you know, follow it really properly, is to vote every single standard as complete.
No.
Okay, that's the standard. What may happen is if you deny, well, when you approve, then you have to do it on every single standard. You can't do it on the whole application. You got to say it meets pollution. You know, it meets.
We're not gonna take individual votes on all that. That's why.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are.
No, that's why he prepares the conclusions of law for us
Oh, that's fine, but you still have to
so
take
that we
individual
vote
votes
on it
each.
one
No,
time.
no, you can't do that.
We're not gonna. It's
I know,
45
I know.
votes
Look,
per application.
but
We're not gonna do
here's-
that.
here's the problem.
We're gonna be here
Here's the problem.
for half an hour.
No, I know.
Everybody, yeah. I mean,
I
it's
know.
stupid.
Ben, I am not the guy who writes the law. I'm just telling you that's the way it's got to be done.
So say it to me one more time.
Okay, so.
Because it sounded like
how
there
many
was an
performance
either
standards do
or.
we have in the site plan? It's like 15 or 16, right?
Well, but it's not just site.
I know, I understand. I'm just saying site plan. It would be 15 different motions.
Well, no, there's no application that's gonna come just, well, that's not true. But even if you're just building a simple duplex and it ends up here, we're pulling in
Well,
every
look,
single
I'll
standard
say
of the
this.
code.
Well,
I'll say this, if you want to risk it on a duplex, I don't care about that. But you can't risk it on subdivision and you can't risk it on site plan. Because those are the types of things that get appealed. And if it goes up to the law court, or actually not even the law court, if it goes to the Superior Court, if the Superior Court doesn't see individual motions, the first thing they're going to do is send it back to you to do, motions. And that could change the whole decision.
So on subdivision A through U, individual motions and votes.
Yeah, unless you're going to waive any conditions because they're not necessary. Like, if you have a site plan, going into an existing building on an acre, you may decide that you don't need to see 2-foot contours. I don't know. If they're stating, we're not going to do anything exterior that's different than what's there now. Right, the planning board has the discretion to grant some waivers. It should not go to the core, issues of what they're trying to decide. But you could make some waivers that might get you fewer of those. But yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, that's what right now that's what the law is requiring you to do.
How many towns in your experience do that?
3 of 5 that I represent.
3 out of 5?
Yep.
Take individual motions and actions.
Yep. Yep, and it's painful, I agree, but for site plan and subdivision. That is what the standard is.
well, we don't really
We don't really have site.
Well, we don't, yeah. we don't call
Well,
that.
you kind of don't, but you kind of do.
Well,
Basically, everything goes
It-
through site.
everything goes through site.
Right.
I'm just looking about, because I imagine we don't have to go through each criteria. We don't have to say the front setback, the front setback.
No, no,
standard is met.
you could say it
Well,
meets the
setback.
setback standards.
Yeah, and that's, so I'm just looking at this and like in a large project plan, the approval standards, there's A through E, so there's 5.
Yeah,
I mean, one of the standards is that it meets the standards of this code.
That's what I'm saying. Is we'll take action on those 5, but then each one of those is backed up by 45 other things.
well, and that's okay, but if it's 5 standards, right, then do 5 motions.
But right, but we don't need to go through the 45 things that, because like I said, standard A is the standard of this code. It
Well,
says,
that's just a vote at the end.
yeah, and that's what, I guess that's what I'm wondering. It says approval standards, the code enforcement officer must.
But so, for example, let's say setbacks, right?
Yeah.
Is one of them dimensional standards? Is that what it says on there? What are the 5?
The 5 are approval standards. The standards of this has to meet the following or verify consistency of the following. Standards of this code, the adopted comprehensive plan of the town of Newcastle,
Oh,
any all prior approvals for the subject property, any additional types of development review required by the code been completed in accordance with the standards of this article.
I can get you a set of motions. I don't think that's detailed enough.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm getting at is
Yeah.
like,
I don't think you need A through U. But I think you probably need at least 10. Basically like, is it meeting, I mean, you don't have architectural standards anymore, but does it meet, not for rural, of course, but like, does it meet the building orientation? And other, like those, whatever those standards are called, I can't remember what they're called in the court.
I'm just wondering, could we go through each article? Like Article 2 is district standards, and then Article 3 is
building
site
standards.
standards, and let me just go to this. District standards, site standards, building standards, design standards, use standards, and then there's administration definition.
Yeah, I think that would probably work.
Just those
Just those 5 or whatever.
5
Yep.
broadly. That's what I was
Right.
trying to understand is like,
Yeah,
to go
Right,
down
because-
into building standards. Every single standard, I mean, that's like 30 pages of
Right,
standards.
so district standards encompasses everything from like maximum lot width,
Yeah,
setbacks,
Right.
Curtain, whatever they're called, the step back of the setbacks.
Yep.
All of those. So if what I want a time where a planning board member can raise their hand and say, wait a minute, this building is turned sideways, doesn't meet the building orientation standard. Right?
okay, so I'm gonna stop freaking out and say that Michael's conclusion of law and finding facts that he's been doing for us is
It probably is enough.
perfectly adequate.
useful, but we need to go
We
through.
need
Yeah.
to just take
If I can-
action on
if
the
I can get that-
individual sections
Yeah,
of the
And
code.
review it.
Yeah.
Yeah, my guess is that it's enough. My guess is it's enough, but I want you to vote each standard.
Yeah, well, I think that's what we have to figure out is when you say each standard, it's not, because like you can go through here and say, like, we don't need to say, does the lot dimension, does it meet the 100-foot
No,
width?
does it meet all the dimensional standards?
Right.
So
And so
Michael's
that's-
finding of facts and conclusion of law does that.
Yeah,
It goes through every single thing and says.
Yeah.
It either meets it or it doesn't.
yeah,
And so what we need to do is, it sounds like, is go through and once we have that, let's just say, if I didn't have any problems, you all went through it, you're like, yep, this all looks good. It sounds like we can go through and say, all right, like basically take a vote and say, does this meet the district standards? Yes. Okay, all in favor, great. Does it meet the site standards? Yes, all in favor, okay, great. And we go through it gets at 6 articles that actually have standards and.
So all you would need to do basically is adjust your proposed motion at the end of the conclusion of finding of facts.
Yeah, or we could
To
do it
to
at the
say
end of
1,
each
2,
section.
3, 4.
Yeah.
Okay, or we could.
Because
do it
I
at
imagine
section.
you want to vote on each,
kind of group of stuff, yeah.
yeah. So it'll be, basically, we're gonna have 5 or 6 votes
Yeah, that's,
to approve.
that's fine.
That's
Okay.
better than 40.
That's better.
Yeah, no, what I really want is I want for Justice Billings.
Yeah.
To be able to look at the decision.
Yeah.
And say, what was the standard that got voted down and why? Right, so he can look and say, oh, it got voted down on dimensional standards. Okay, so completeness, they provided a site plan.
Yep.
Right, that's complete. Right? However, on dimensional standards, Ben pointed out that the lot was 200 feet wide in a district where it's supposed to be 100 feet maximum width. So that's why it got voted down by a majority of the planning board members. Okay. He doesn't have to then like go searching through to figure out why that happened. He can get that from, this standard is what failed. And he can look at the minutes on that standard. And say, oh, I see what was going on there. Okay. So, or a tape, you tape all your sessions now, I think.
Yep.
So you look at the tape and they say, yeah, this is a reasonable conclusion of the planning board. If it's a little more nebulous, right? Like, is the building oriented to the driveway or the road?
Mhm.
Right? What was the planning board's rationale about why this design, was oriented toward the road or not?
Right.
Right. And as well, if that application gets appealed, they have to be able to say why the application should have not passed, for example. Right? Like if a neighbor appeals.
So to tie this into the question I had before about giving a reason, if we vote on during the substantive review, we would vote on each basically set of standards, i.e. each chapter of the core zoning code.
Mhm.
6 votes.
Yeah.
It would be best to include in the motion to, if we were to deny,
Mhm.
a reason pointing to a specific standard or several standards that didn't meet.
Sure. So you don't have to necessarily point toward it, as long as the discussion is on tape about what happened.
Oh, okay.
I used to say, go ahead and put down what everyone thinks they're not meeting.
Yeah.
But as long as they see a discussion and they try to figure out whether or not, vote 2 failed, why, right? They should be able to understand kind of what the planning board, even if there's no evidence at all about why they, like, let's say no one discusses anything and they call a vote and a vote turns it down. Even that is enough, because then the court can look at the standards and say, was this just an arbitrary decision, right? Or did they actually have an argument about what they did? And then also that would involve, 2 lawyers at least arguing about why that standard did or did not, get met.
Yep.
The whole, I know this sounds strange because we're the town, but like at the end of the day, we have an obligation to make sure that we don't hide the ball on the applicant or on appellants.
Right.
And so, we just have to make sure that we're being clear in our reasoning about what we think it failed on or didn't fail on.
Yeah.
So that someone else can point out. I'll give you an example. In Damerscott, the Camden National Bank building.
Yep.
Right, there's a clear standard right in the ordinance that says any new commercial use has to have sidewalks along the frontage of the property.
Yes.
They didn't do it.
Right.
It was an easy appeal standard. Billings decided that case differently, but that was a clear standard they did not meet, and the planning board did not require it. It should have been decided differently by the court. But he went on standing, which is like whether or not the person involved had
Reason to bring up the.
whether they had brought this up during the discussions with the planning board and whether they actually appeared at all the planning board sessions. He took a very extreme position that the appellant had to have appeared at least a few of the meetings throughout the process. And because she was in Chile, even though she'd hired a lawyer to represent her and the lawyer put letters on record about her objections, that wasn't enough. Hey, it's That's how it got decided, man.
Okay,
So, but yeah, that's those things, you want the court applicants and appellants to be able to argue over what the actual facts are.
So, one of your questions was, do we need a reason for completeness? And he said, no,
No,
but it sounds like it would be a good idea to have reasons or some conversation at least about meeting the standards, about the
Mhm.
substantive.
yeah, I mean, so for incompleteness, it would be better to be like, I don't think there's enough here because. And then if that argument carries the planning board, you're good to go. That's,
Yeah.
that's perfectly fine.
That's so, but you don't. Yeah, I mean, I guess giving a reason is probably better always.
It is better. You don't want it to be too definite, because you
that
have
was
to-
gonna be my next question, is if you give a reason
Right.
and don't give all the reasons,
right, that's the problem.
then
So you have, 3 planning board members voting to deny completeness on dimensional, well, not that dimension.
well, anything in site standards.
Yeah, something more amorphous, right?
Yeah.
If you if you have a discussion and everybody talks about what they disagree with, even if they disagree about which different sections are complete or not, right? That can go into the decision about why that's not met. And so if you're gonna do a reason behind it, then I would do a reason that's complete. Make sure you capture everybody's idea, and you do that the next time with the minutes. Right, so you have your decision at the minutes, and you say, okay, this is what I proposed, does everyone think this is accurate about what we did and why? And so when that gets voted, that becomes the official decision. So,
So yeah, we need some substance.
yeah, I mean, I think it's best.
Yeah, which I mean, I think we've been doing. It's just maybe we need to be a little more articulate
Yeah,
with the voting.
The
Yeah.
trickier thing seems like, that you brought up, like if you approve it and then somebody appeals that.
Right,
And did you discuss all the reasons why it does meet the standard?
Yeah.
Or did you miss one? I don't know how comprehensive that discussion really has to be. 'Cause
well,
it's like, well, you look, yeah, it looks good.
on the
you know.
approval, I would say you need less, you don't really need anything on an approval. And the reason you don't is that if the appellant found something that you missed, right, and they want to appeal on that ground, they just say they didn't address this and therefore they missed the applicant didn't meet this performance standard.
So, I mean, just following up on that, our normal process has been, Michael will do the preliminary review and provide the finding of facts.
Mhm.
And then when we review it here, I mean, we review it individually, but then when we review it here, we don't step through or read aloud. The applicant met this standard by doing this, 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 and this. We really only flip to the ones that are sort of questionable or problematic, and we discuss those.
That's okay too.
Okay,
But
that's what I thought.
I do put something in there that says like, the standard is this, they're proposing this, meets the standard.
It means the standard, you
So
do,
there's
exactly.
something there. So I mean, that seems like,
To me, that seems like, do we have to actually say out loud, like, yes, we
Read
agree?
everyone.
Well-
You don't, for sure on an approval, you don't. Right, because the approval is saying they met everything.
Yeah.
Right, so if the appellant finds something that you didn't meet, they can point that out.
Yeah.
On the denial.
Yeah.
I think you want more of a substantive reason why you're denying.
And we always discuss that. I mean,
Yeah.
if we're
Yeah.
gonna, if it ends that way, we've discussed it ad nauseum, like,
Sure.
that's.
Oh,
Like
I've been
we
to
did
planning
today.
board meetings before.
Yeah.
Well, I think we had that a couple meetings ago when somebody ended up not having an acreage,
Yes,
but,
right,
yeah, so we had to,
yes, we had a lot of discussion.
yeah, we had a lot of discussion and they left with ideas of maybe how they could do something or not do something, so we
But
just
did
didn't,
deny it.
but we did deny it.
Yeah, so if the guy that was here before, right, had brought a subdivision application.
Mhm.
Let's say he had 3 lots instead of 2. And he didn't have his 250-foot long private road.
Mhm.
You had a perfect discussion for what, what standard applies, why, where did it go? And I was not trying to overrule you guys. I was just pointing out what I read in the ordinance.
It's good.
And so, in that case, you would have denied him not on completeness, right? Because he's showing, hey, I've got a 100-foot road laid out this, or a 100-foot driveway laid out this way.
Yep.
You'd be denying him on the substantive meaning of that standard, which is he didn't have a 250-foot private road.
Right.
So.
Good.
Yeah. So that was a perfect discussion for what I would want to see in a denial.
Okay.
Clear as mud.
Hopefully a little better than mud. Creek water, maybe creek water.
No, I feel better, honestly, you answered the questions, some of the most pertinent questions, and I think we can tweak our
Yeah,
process
without,
without a lot of upheaval.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think it's minor, it's not,
Probably the findings of fact, which I would put proposed findings of fact until you adopt them. The proposed findings of facts, if those can be grouped into like groups
Yeah.
of standards.
well,
I
that,
think
that's
because it follows the
the
whole.
ordinance.
the ordinance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect,
Yeah.
perfect.
So,
Yeah.
and I think we should go through, vote on each group, and then at the end, maybe we can basically do the same thing we've been doing, which is the motion is to like adopt the findings of fact and if we're approve the application.
Yeah.
But you've already gone through and had the 5 or 6 votes, and then you say, yeah, okay, great, whatever this is, whatever's in here, we're voting to adopt it, and
Well, and the other thing you could do is you could break out one of those standards. If you think there's really just one that they didn't meet. Right, you could break that out and do your own motion on that one.
Mhm.
Here's the only problem with grouping the standards. I just realized what it would be. I still don't think it's a problem, but I'll just point it out to you. Let's say you have some three amorphous standards, right?
We don't have a more.
I know you don't really, but I'm just saying, let's say you did. Right? I know the greatness of the form-based code is it's really
No, I'm joking.
easy to.
We've already found several of those.
Okay, well,
We're
It's
working
pretty,
on it.
I mean, it's pretty well defined versus, don't you
Sure.
remember the
Oh.
rhythm of solids to
Rhythm of solids
voids?
to voids. Yes.
And I'm sure he may, he's like, oh yeah, rhythm of solids to voids, the rest of us are like, what rhythm?
No,
Yeah.
no, that's not a standard.
I mean,
So let's say you have some amorphous standards. One planning board member thinks 3A wasn't met.
Yeah.
Planning board member 2 thinks 4B or 3C wasn't met. Planning board member 3 thinks 3K wasn't met. Now, that's enough for a majority vote, but they don't all agree on which standard wasn't met.
Right.
So if the applicant went back and got an individual vote on each thing.
Well, but in that case, we could just break out. I
Right,
mean, it would be up to the individual planning board member who has an objection to that specific standard
right.
to make a motion on it. It would either pass and be discussed, or it would fail and not.
Yeah.
And there'd be action taken on it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so I think, but what you're doing is like that hybrid approach where you say, yeah, A through E are fine.
Yeah.
F through, H are fine. And then you get down to like M through S and you're like, ooh, N is kind of a problem. Do we want to take that as a separate vote
Yeah.
and discussion?
I got you.
And maybe you do that on that application.
Okay.
so the problem, the specific problem standards we should dive into. but
Right,
Assuming that nobody has any objection to, we could, if everybody's on the same page that they're met, we can kind of batch those.
Mhm.
And then just dive into
Yeah.
the ones that we think are an issue.
So while we've got you here, we've got something tabled. I'd like to wrap this up so we can move on.
Okay.
It's 8:10. But I'd like to bring back the new business project for Z38 LLC 38 Academy Hill Road and discuss completeness
okay,
Well,
of the application.
Yeah.
Right? Because we tabled that.
we did, right.
And so
well,
Don't go anywhere.
No, I'm not.
now that in light of that conversation, it seems like, well, I mean, I don't, doesn't seem like there's any reason to look at it to say, to consider it for completion or not. The applicant basically said, table it. I don't want on this, it's not gonna be here to discuss it. And my thinking about like, well, we should say whether or not it's complete so that we can say, we need more information. Doesn't help.
Doesn't actually get anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, I mean, I can identify any number of standards that you can't, that you wouldn't be able to say are met. There's like information that is missing. And I was thinking it was a much broader, like, yeah, you submitted a site plan, we got a site plan, great. Is every detail on there, provided? No. But now it's like, there's lots of details provided, so. I mean,
So,
if they want to, push the subject and say, I want you to tell me what's missing, like, we can do that next meeting, but there's plenty, it's not even really close at this point. I don't think, feel different.
so. Okay, so you're saying
Well, I kind of feel like if he's not here and he wants to push it,
it's a non-issue anyway.
it's a non-issue.
Right.
That's fine.
Why are we,
If you're missing a lot, obviously, first glance, why,
Right.
yeah, why do it?
That's, and that,
That's black and white.
I think it is right now. So that's why I'm saying, like, I don't see any reason to push and say we should.
I mean, if they were here. and
Yeah,
They
they wanted-
wanted us to
right,
dive
that's the other
into
thing
it,
is-
then we dive into it.
Yeah.
Good enough,
So,
off the table.
Check,
Okay,
check.
check. Thank you very much. Appreciate all that. Clarified a lot, I think.
You
Got it,
have
that's all
other
straight.
stuff on the-
Well, we're gonna move on to talking about the weapon sales regulation proposal.
Okay,
If you want to stay for that, you can, you don't.
Sure.
have to.
sure.
Okay, so item 5B, gotta find it here, we got too many things open. Where did it go? Oh, I don't have it open, sorry. Michael, you wanna get us started?
oh, sure. We talked about this at the last meeting, and I assume everybody remembers that there was a vote at a special town meeting 2 months ago, more, to put a moratorium in place for issuing permits relating to selling of firearms in Newcastle. So the select board and the town manager tasked us with coming up with some kind of language that would address the sale of firearms, or, there's, and I say, whether it's vague, because it occurred to me that the same logic that is, keeping guns away from a school probably would apply to any actual weapon. You probably don't want anybody.
Well, so just one brief clarification. So what you're doing is you're talking about the location of a firearms sale location,
Yeah,
right? Not the selling of firearms, but
right, yes.
the location of, okay.
That's, well, I just wanted to say, like, when I'm saying firearms, I just went with broader, but that's to your point, the 4 kind of general items that I identified as like, we need to calibrate is whether you're talking about retail sales, whether this applies to wholesale, what we're talking about. But I think also, to your point, and since I've written this, I think it's probably how we define retail is maybe the question, but retail sales, whether we're talking about firearms versus weapons, you want to be kind of very specific or broad, what uses we're buffering from, and how far we want to buffer. And so I think all the 4 of those are kind of what I want to nail down with the planning board, so that we can say so we can craft some specific language. What I can tell you is what I came up with that is kind of just proposed is to add weapon sales as a use and basically say, you know, define where that's allowed to be, define what that is, and then say you have to be this far away from. So I'll say weapon sales use, whether primary, accessory, otherwise, shall not be located in a lot or virtual lot that is located completely or partially within 300 feet of any lot which contains a primary, secondary school use, college, university use, or dormitory use associated with a primary, secondary school use or college, university use. So basically, we're buffering 300 feet from primary or secondary schools and colleges and universities or dorms associated with them. And we are limiting the sale of weapons, which proposed definition would be something such as a club, knife, gun used to injure, defeat, or destroy. This definition shall not include antiques existing prior to the year 1850, BB guns, scuba guns, construction, stud or nail guns, pop guns, or items addressed under the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, Federal Firearms License Type 03, which is curios and relics. So all of, yeah, so that's.
So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess it's the transition from talking about firearms
Yes.
prohibition versus a weapons prohibition. It seems like it gets very. What's a weapon? A bottle, a broken bottle is a weapon. I mean, that seems like I'm not sure if that was the intent of the meeting.
Well, and that's why that's exactly the first or second item I wanted to discuss with you. I did pull the firearm definition of firearm from Code of Federal Regulations, and it's any portable weapon such as a rifle, carbine, machine gun, shotgun, or fowling piece from which a shot, bullet, or other projectile may be discharged by an explosive. So that's kind of the specific if you just want to do firearm, and then the broad standard of weapon, which was club, knife, gun, whatever, used to destroy. So
Which is and that was a CFR definition, or was that
the weapon,
Merriam-Webster
I think it
definition?
that's a good question. I don't recall.
With the CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations.
No, that one, the definition for firearm was
Yeah,
CFR.
Okay, right.
Right.
But as far as weapon, that was, yeah, something such as a club, knife, or gun used to injure, defeat, or destroy. That's probably
Sounds like a dictionary definition.
Yeah.
It's fine, but it just seems like that's broadening the scope of what we're trying to do here beyond what I thought the town was voting on.
And I think it also potentially opens it up for abuse,
It
for the
seems
town
like
people religious about
proliferate.
what they consider a weapon and regulate. I don't think that's what we're
A
talking
hockey
about
stick,
necessarily.
I mean,
Yeah.
what's a
steak knife.
club? That's yeah.
All of a sudden you can't open a kitchen supply store because there's knives, right?
Yeah, I mean, which seems silly, but that's sort of,
Right.
that is like,
Yeah.
I could see a lot of alarm bells going off.
Right.
People think we're gonna ban nothing knives,
I don't think that's what was
which isn't,
at all, and I mean, the definition of firearm that you got here.
Yeah.
Is, I think, in line with. The intent.
And that's, I'll say, I mentioned that I had a conversation with Lucas earlier, and because he pointed out ATF, whatever
Yeah,
the definition was I had.
Yeah,
the
those different
licenses.
classifications.
This,
Yeah.
he seemed to indicate this definition of firearm he thought made
Good one.
sense and was the right one to use to define.
yeah, it doesn't include pellet guns. I mean, compressed air, it's not explosive, doesn't count as a
Right,
firearm.
right, that's. And maybe I don't know, maybe it's not necessary. We could make sure to clarify that this does not include construction tools because some of those are, use like explosives to move things.
But a nail gun isn't a
They're
firearm.
not,
So if you call it a firearm, a nail gun is
Right.
not classified as a firearm.
Yeah, right.
Right.
No, that's, I'm
But
just.
if you say
making-
firearms versus weapons, then I guess it could be in that category. But I would not think a nail gun, which when you're talking about construction stuff, that's what I think of. That to me is not fire.
No.
Right, no, I would just want to make sure that's clear. If we're using the firearm definition that's saying like, just because it says. Fouling piece from which a shot, bullet, or other projectile may be discharged by an explosive, but. We can just leave it at this, or. We can try to make it. Very clear, we're not talking about construction things, but.
I don't think, if you start down that, it's a
Rabbit hole?
deep rabbit hole.
yeah,
And I think.
Yeah, excluding,
Yeah, excluding. I think this is short, sweet, to the point.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's very clear
Mhm.
what we're talking about.
and also, I mean, you could adopt it by reference. And then, say, as defined by the Code of Federal Regulations.
Well, you can include this.
Yeah.
Definition. As defined in.
Yeah.
And then if that standard changes,
Exactly, that's my thought, is if the ATF changes what the firearm is.
we're just following there.
Then
We
we,
did that with the driveways, roads and entrances, so it
Yeah.
just follows the DOT standards. So
Right,
the DOT
exactly.
standards change.
Our stand, our
Our
standards
standards
always
change.
make a change.
okay, so that, because we can put that in the. Standard or the definition of the use, basically, and just say, person or business that. Provides firearms. As defined in. We don't have to add a whole nother definition.
I agree.
So that way it changes that, I think we can. Okay. So then firearms is the answer to question 2.
So tease out what you, question 1, retail versus
Mhm.
wholesale. What are you getting at there?
Is this retail exchanges or? I think it was like, do we just want this to be? Well, let's see, the definition sell of commodities and small quantities to ultimate consumers. When I was going through this retail. My thinking, this came up, I also had this conversation with Lucas today, was. If you're selling retail. That's basically someone who's. From, off the street, a member of the public, you have a retail space, it's. Because what I don't think, I'm pretty sure we cannot regulate is like if somebody is in their house. And they sell a gun to
To the neighbor.
a friend,
No, I don't think you
You
can.
can't.
because that's not gonna be land use. That's
No.
not,
That's right.
right,
It's not.
you're,
No,
so,
and I think actually, if someone is in their house selling a gun.
Mhm.
And it's not a retail, it's not, Cabela's or,
right,
I think then you're looking at a independent transfer and it's not regulated.
yeah, I kind of likened it to like, if you sell your car out of your driveway, doesn't make you a car dealer, right? It's just like, still the land use is still. It's your house, it's residential, is what I just, just because you sold something doesn't make you now business. At some point you might transition into that, but. That's where,
yeah, but that's retail versus personal exchange. That's
Yeah.
not retail versus wholesale.
Yeah.
Wholesale sort of gets it like, the question, is this about just retail sales or should it also cover, weapons manufacturing and then wholesale
Mhm.
sales of weapons?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm not selling to the public.
I don't know how that, I guess maybe I have to research that, because I don't know how wholesale guns work, like, I don't know if you still have to use. I assume that you still have to get an independent transfer certificate from any gun sent from a factory to a retail store. I'm sure you have to do it through an FFL. It can't, and it's probably independently done. You know what I mean? I don't think you could, you can like, you can be like, oh yeah, we sent them 40 guns. I don't think that works. I think that the way the ATF does it, it's probably on per each
has
gun,
to
yeah.
be-
Here, we've got, 30 forms. This shows where it's going.
Each one is tracked.
You would have to be per serial numbers.
Yeah, I think it would be for serial numbers. Now, once that goes into the public, once that first FFL sale happens, unless it again goes across state lines. I don't think you are bound by that regulation right now in Maine. I think you are in some states, but not in Maine. Some states I think actually have it like. I think they have like, they almost have like a FFL except for the state. I think Massachusetts does.
I don't know enough about this.
Yeah.
But it sounds to me like we're probably talking more about direct sales to the public with a point of sale station inside a retail establishment.
You know, I don't
It's-
see us
and
having
not-
wholesale sales
Yeah,
in Newcastle,
not-
Maine.
Wholesale to retailer sales.
Well, if Sig Sauer is gonna come to Newcastle, it's not gonna,
Well,
it's not
let's
gonna
just,
be close to Lincoln County, but.
let's just say somebody, builds unique firearms
Sure,
as their business.
sure.
I think what we're talking about is like the direct sale to the public in proximity to those institutions.
From an establishment for him, that is the
That is the
business.
use,
versus
is
that is the
the
use.
Right.
sale.
Exactly, the use is the same.
And that comes back to maybe what we need to define as a use, which is firearm sales.
Firearm sales.
and that's
Right.
where this came up, is just using the definition in the code, basically basing it off of retail and service general, which is a use that's in here. It's a business that provides goods or services directly to the consumer, and where such goods or services are available for immediate purchase on the premises by the purchaser.
Yeah. I think that
So
works.
Because
that,
you don't want to just say firearm sales because people could take that as individual sales to each other. So it's
yes,
got to be retail sales.
and well, and that's why
Well, that's the retail definition.
this was the definition for retail and service general. But a business that provides firearms directly to the consumer. That seems very broad. And where such goods or services are available for immediate purchase on the premises by the purchaser. Does that mean that if you have a 3-day waiting period, like that's not immediate and that's not,
I think we have a 3-day waiting period for anything.
no. But I guess, would you get around this immediate thing by saying like, well, you have to come back, pick it up tomorrow?
Oh, no.
But require our right to purchase.
Yeah.
It's been 3 to 5 days. And-
Really?
And I'm.
I had 3 days.
Also legit guy, I did it.
No, I'm sure you are.
From Mark Doe and fill out the paperwork. I just wanted.
And then you still have to go back 3 days later?
Absolutely.
Huh.
I have not purchased one where they just said, here you go.
I haven't ever had to do that.
Yeah, I know, there's no rhyme or reason, but it is.
Huh.
That's the way it works most.
As of August first, it's a 3-day wait.
What's that?
As of August first.
At gun shows.
No, every.
No, but gun shows
is
is
that right?
included in that.
Beans, like, yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, that's a change. Whenever I bought, and I went through, Mark with a pistol. And I just showed up and he called the ATF and
But as of August first,
It's
it's
no
a
change, but-
72-hour waiting period. Drive back, irreparable, yeah.
Well, anyway, times.
no, I understand.
I
I
don't know when
understand.
that happened, but
Yeah,
it all depends probably to who you are and they decide whether they're gonna background check you or not.
oh, I was definitely background checked, but,
No, I mean,
Like a-
and then.
oh, okay.
So maybe let's get back to the definition here. Maybe what's actually appropriate would be to create a definition for firearm sales.
Mhm.
So we have a definition for firearm.
Mhm.
And we have a definition for firearm sales. That includes some of the language that exists
Based off of retail.
based off of retail and sales and service general.
Yeah.
But also is tied more closely to the specific.
Right, because I'm just thinking, maybe you don't say, available for immediate purchase. But it's available on the premises by the purchaser.
I mean, so let me make a distinction, a bit of a distinction here. I think if you had somebody in their house, right? Like I'm thinking of Terry up in North Newcastle.
Sure.
So he is an FFL. So if someone buys a gun on Gun Broker, they can have it shipped to him.
Yep.
he does their background check, delivers the gun to them. I don't think that this moratorium was meant to stop that.
Right.
No.
And so, you know, I think that in thinking about it, we need to encompass that that is not what we're talking about. And it may take, we may have to kind of discuss it to kind of come up with something that
Mhm.
tries to meet that.
Yeah.
Cause I think, you know, I think that's the,
It's like the public facing aspect of it.
Yeah,
really, I think,
exactly.
is the issue. And that's where I'm trying to like, that's why I started with the retail. And I'm trying to like figure that out because I think the issue is people are concerned that someone's going to walk in off the street, you know, pick up a gun, buy it, and then walk to the school or some variation of that. But right now, I mean,
I
from
think
what we're
we're-
hearing, you don't have, can't do that because there's going to be a 3-day waiting period anyway. And it also sounds like people don't really want to address the, like, get a gun shipped to my house. I'm a licensed dealer and you come pick it up. That's not, again, it's not public facing. So.
well, there's another interesting problem with it, which is that if, I mean, I'm pretty sure that Lincoln, I haven't checked this actually, but I'm pretty sure they're covered by the gun-free schools requirement as well. And their property extends to the midline of the Academy Hill Road. And on some spots, it's both sides. Meaning you could purchase and then only stay on one side of the road. And, you know, you could only go south, basically, or not toward, no, not south, I guess, but toward town.
Oh, I see what you mean legally.
Yeah, legally, because the minute you turn left and you're headed up the hill, you just violated the law.
Right.
You're on.
You're on school property.
It's crazy.
So, you know, I mean, there's that as well.
So technically you can't drive past Lincoln Academy with a gun in your car.
No, I don't
If
think,
they are within that.
I don't think you can.
You know, Lucas.
I don't think it's
It would have been
enforced.
good if
but-
he was here, but because he had something.
Lucas?
He's the fourth.
Oh, okay.
Couldn't remember. When he was when I was talking today, he mentioned exactly this. But he was talking about Freeport because LL Bean is there and the high school is right next to it, and I guess there was some issue where it was possible to go into LL Bean and buy a gun, and as soon as you left, you were breaking the law.
Right, yeah.
I think something's changed where he was basically saying it's not like you still can't take it onto the school property, but you know,
can walk out.
you're allowed to, like, and I don't know exactly what the details, but that's why it would be good if he was here. But
So when they sent out a letter to the students saying, go hunting in the morning, but don't leave your gun in your car in the school parking lot. They neglected to mention that actually that's the.
They
That
didn't
is-
say that. It's
think they
definitely
said
against
that.
the law.
I don't think they said that.
I mean, when I was a kid, you know, we didn't think anything of seeing two rifles in the back of a pickup.
Yeah.
No, everybody, every pickup had rifles hanging.
Yeah,
out.
exactly.
you know,
I could be wrong.
I'm pretty sure
I
my
just
grandfather
remember
shot
that
deer out
wasn't
of a pickup, which is
Yeah.
definitely illegal. So
Okay, so let's just, it's 8:33. I just wanna,
so we want to,
this is a good conversation, but we have to address item 3, which is, so we're moving
Yeah.
along. Uses other than K through 12 schools, so potential uses currently defined by the core zoning include, like we said, primary and secondary schools. So the question is assembly use. College and university, I think still falls under, like your definition says, primary and secondary school, college and university falls under that same situation, but then there's commercial school, cultural facility, daycare center, dormitory use, which you talked about, human service facility, live entertainment, research, laboratory, and residential care facility.
I just tried to be broad and throw them all out there.
I personally think that the schools, no, I mean, because this could be
the whole time.
the
Yeah.
whole town.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it just is ridiculous. I mean, it's, if somebody truly, I'm not trying to be negative here, if somebody truly wants to hurt somebody,
They're gonna find a way.
they're gonna find a way.
Mhm.
And we don't want to put up barriers to somebody being arrested because my neighbor's mad at me and I have a daycare center and I know that he has a gun and
Yeah.
he's within so
Well,
many
that's-
feet of my
Well, I mean, we're
house.
talking about retail sales.
Yeah, that's where,
Not
that is
just
where,
where
it's only
people
where you
have
can
a
put
gun,
your, from my understanding, my takeaway from that last conversation was we're wanting to keep this to retail, so it really would just
Right.
be if you have a store
Where you put
that
shop.
sells guns retail. Basically, you almost like.
So
need a
in
shop front.
Newcastle right now, the only store we have is Marked Out, right?
No,
No?
I
well,
don't,
it all depends on what you mean by that.
yeah, my understanding, he doesn't sell retail. Like, it's not like,
Well, he kind of does.
does he?
Yeah.
Well, he sells them out of the store, so that sort
Yeah,
of makes him.
I would
retail.
say he is in retail gun sales.
So, because if I walked in there, I could be like, I want a gun and do.
Yeah,
that.
I'm not sure that
Well,
he'd
he
sell it to
probably-
you immediately, but he has them there.
He has the ability to
Okay,
order them.
okay,
for
So
you.
then, yeah, that sounds.
Yeah. He has the ability, he has inventory. So, that probably is the only one that constitutes an actual retail use. But, you have, I can't remember, I did the count at one point, I think it was 4 licensed firearm dealers. Because Bobby Foster's one, and then there are a couple others, I don't know if they want to be named or not, but.
That's fine.
But
Getting back to the question, I think we're talking,
Yeah.
like Wanda said, about primary, secondary schools and college, university use, and that's, I think that's the limit of
Just
what we're really talking
schools,
about.
specific.
schools.
Not a
That's-
preschool.
yeah, that's what I wanted to know. When I was talking with Lucas earlier, basically he was like, I don't think college and university is necessary. I think it really is just.
Do we have
It
that?
doesn't have.
Well,
to
no,
be
that- I mean, we don't have
Included,
them now.
We have it as a separate use. The only
Yeah.
reason that included is because
Yeah.
it is a defined use as a school. We don't have any of them, but if the
Right.
University of Maine.
Well, actually, they did talk about putting a nursing campus here. at
It
one
could
point.
have.
The Darling Center,
Yeah.
or you know what I mean, like,
I think that primary and second, well, no, there's daycare centers, but I don't, doesn't sound like anybody's.
I mean, the
think we gotta keep
daycare
it
centers I'm
simple.
thinking of, the big one is near you. It's across from Maritime Energy, right?
The one in
yeah,
Shakespeare.
yeah.
Head Start.
Head Start?
Yeah, so do we care if there's, do you think the community is looking for a prohibition around that too, or no?
That was the one of all of these, that was the one that I thought, we're about kindergartners, are we not worried about? Preschool.
Okay. Well,
I mean,
But I don't know, I mean,
Head
that's,
Start is actually classified as a school. It's not a daycare.
yeah, but it's not K,
but yeah.
not kindergarten.
It's not kindergarten.
So we're ruling it out if we're saying only kindergarten and up.
Is
So-
primary,
Oh, I guess what I was saying, yeah, it does say K through 12. where I was
elementary
going was
through.
basically
Well,
schools.
Schools.
it doesn't.
You just say schools.
Schools.
Yeah,
Well,
and not say what age. what
Right.
Schools. So I mean,
Let's
I
see.
guess that question. the
Well, we have
question
our
is, you
uses
mean
that we gotta refer to.
vocational
We have to
schools?
refer,
We
right.
don't have we have daycare, but we don't have preschool as a use.
so
Oh, I see.
the definition as it exists was a public, private, or parochial institution offering instruction at the elementary through high school levels with a full range of curricular programs.
That's the definition for what?
Primary, secondary.
Primary, secondary.
So it doesn't, I don't know, like, I don't know, does that include pre-K? I don't know. I assume it includes kindergarten.
Amend that definition to include pre-K. And
Offering a full range of educational instruction, including any or all levels. So this was, okay, I said, I had some edits to it and it was public or private parochial institution offering a full range of educational instruction, including any or all levels up to and including the 12th grade and or high school courses.
To exclude
But do you want to,
college.
well, yeah, this would not include, this is up to and including high
Yeah.
school, but because then college and university is a separate.
We already have that.
we have that.
But do you want to start it at K,
Yes,
pre-K?
change the use from primary, secondary school to pre/primary/secondary school. And change the definition of match. And then it's clear,
Okay.
we're capturing schools, that's what
Yeah.
we're talking about.
Basically from pre-K to through high school.
Yes,
Yeah, that makes sense. And then we discussed last time, how are we going to measure? And it was basically going to be lot line to lot line. It's going to be the whole lot that they're on. Distance. And I just used 300 when I was speaking with Lucas earlier. He said, yeah, 300 makes sense because that is, I think right now, the distance you're allowed. You have to be at least that far away from a house and roads and schools to discharge a firearm, but it's at least related to something.
Yeah.
So thoughts on that? It's 300.
I like the bubbles. you
Oh, I
did.
did. Yeah, I didn't.
I like, from our discussion last week, last month. I like that I would like that number to be relatable to something that exists. So 400 feet is not relatable, 500 feet is, it's not based on it.
Right.
Well, it's based on, I think 500 feet is alcohol and 1,000 is marijuana.
I don't know about, we don't regulate marijuana.
No, I know, but it stays standard.
I don't know what the state standard is. Adult use is 1,500 feet.
Yeah, right. Medical is, I think.
Yeah. And 1,500 seemed,
That's pretty far.
That's really far. Well,
Yeah.
that's half.
So does 300 feet keep Mark out of the bullseye?
Mark
I
has a
don't-
pre-existing,
yeah,
Non-conforming use.
Yeah.
Okay,
if this passed, you'd have a pre-existing.
okay.
right. But I think anything beyond like 50 feet is gonna end up.
Because I think 300 feet would put him in it, right?
Yeah,
If
Yeah.
it wasn't pre-existing, but he's pre-existing.
100 would put it.
Oh, two would put it in, his property directly abuts the
It's,
backside. of it.
right.
Right.
I think,
School property,
well, I think the train tracks are between, no?
that's a right of way.
Uh,
I don't
That
think
may-
they own that.
that may be a fee.
Really?
Let me see.
That's, I mean, I think 300 is a good number.
Oh, that's
And
not
try to
too
cut it
much.
so close that we.
This
don't
one's
have
100.
That Mark
Oh, that's
is,
Well, and I think
then-
if
then-
it's the
This
distance
was
that you can
300.
shoot a firearm from the road or
It's
whatever,
really-
then that makes sense.
Yeah, it's not that far.
Yeah, it's not that much.
I'm
No.
happy with 300. I think it's
yeah.
based on something
I
people
think
already know.
That
and
seems
recognize.
rational.
300 basically means, at least on Academy Hill, once you go past the highway. That's where it effectively puts this. I mean, roughly, I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
See what you mean, Peter, though, they do own property on. But it doesn't matter.
that's fine,
I mean, it's
I think.
agnostic of the school. It's like, you know what I mean?
It's
2000.
schools.
It's schools.
Can't do it in downtown.
Yeah, that's.
So retail. And yeah, retail firearms, just primary, secondary and pre-K. And 300 feet, is that?
I think that's where we're landing.
We say,
Yep.
we said not colleges and universities, or we said schools, which includes pre-K.
Well,
We were
we're
expanding
gonna
the
use-
definition of the use so that it doesn't include pre-K, right?
Yeah, primary and secondary, we're gonna expand so that it does include pre-K.
Right.
If you want colleges, if you want anything beyond 12th grade, we would have to consider including colleges and universities.
I would.
I think
You would
It's a
include them?
school. I
It's a
would.
school.
Yeah, okay, that's fine, that's fine. So colleges and universities and basically, yes, those two,
Yes.
got it.
Okay.
So just so that we're clear, are you comfortable if I draft that up and share with the planning board, the select board? Kevin would like to put something before the select board on Monday so that the public hearing could be held at the planning board's August meeting.
Public hearing on,
On the proposed ordinance. Or at least for the select board to consider what they do with it.
I don't know.
Feels like we should,
I think we should.
We should
actually
review
have
it.
the final
We should have it.
before-
That's fair. I just know I know Kevin's intent, and I don't know exactly what conversations have with the select board. My understanding is wants to move it along because we have a moratorium for 6 months and doesn't want to drag it out,
sure,
but
but
But if it comes back next month and we, okay, what you say, then
We're still well within the 6 months. Right?
but yeah, no, that's fine.
We're only 1 month in. A month and a half. So. Yeah.
It feels like-
No, it's almost 2 months. It's
well,
almost
2 months, in, but we're not 5 months in.
But we're not 5 months in.
Well, it's good to have the discussion, and get it moving anyway.
Yeah.
We're 2 months in.
Yeah.
So,
But we want, I mean, we gotta take it seriously and be as, light as we can.
Yeah.
Getting it done, so.
Yeah.
but, okay, I'm just looking at, let's just look at the calendar real quick. So. Our next meeting is August 15th. And then the very next select board meeting would be August 19th. And then. This is land use, so it has to have
30 days.
30 days
Oh,
There has to
before
be
the
a
public hearing?
Yep,
Yeah,
public hearing in 30 days posted.
30th of the planning board.
30
For
days
land
posted
use.
before the vote by the town.
Right, but what I'm saying is it's not. Because it's land use, it's a planning board public hearing, it's not a select board public hearing.
Right, correct, a planning board public hearing.
and do we need 30 days before that public hearing?
No, that has to be within 30 days of the vote.
That's
Right,
okay.
you need to post it before the general vote by the population,
Within
That's
30 days
30
or at
days.
least 30 days?
at least 30.
And there's some, I imagine, some amount of time before the public planning board public hearing. It's not 30 days.
It's 14 days. But basically you don't have to post, but you have to notice it twice.
Yeah, so
Correct.
even
So
if
that's-
we, I'm just running the numbers, the math on the calendar here is that even if we don't have. The complete language until August 15th. And then we schedule a public hearing. For September. Right?
You know, you can still make some numbers.
That's 4 months and then we can still have the vote in November
Yep.
and we're good.
That's fine with me. I just don't I don't wanna drag it out any more than.
You know,
So,
the marching orders are definitely gonna go.
Yeah, absolutely.
but yeah,
No, but I think we should.
you don't wanna rush it either.
We don't wanna rush it. We should see it and consider it. We've had 2 really good discussions these last 2 meetings about it. So, I think that's fine. Do either of you have any public comments about this?
Yeah, I'm just confused. What's the safety concern? This is the whole point of having this moratorium. The students can't get out of Lincoln Academy and go buy a gun from them and take it back to school. They can't do that. Nobody can. So what is the safety concern? What is the threat to the public about them that's selling retail and firearms in an area that's zoned commercial, light industrial retail? All of a sudden now we're cherry picking. But you can sell over there. I don't see the threat.
Yeah, I definitely
can
think,
explain, not because they don't like guns or they're scared of guns, that doesn't carry. What is the threat to the public or retailing guns across the street?
Well, so first of all, we don't know the answer, right?
no, we don't know the
Oh,
answer.
The town, I'm not saying it's not a fair comment. The town, you know, was concerned. It was given the option of doing a moratorium and they chose to do it. You can't really comment on why individual 92% of the town voted for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Well, the people who showed up at the meeting.
That's people showed up.
Well, that, I mean.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a lot of opinions on both sides of the issue, honestly. And I've heard your comments from other people as well. I think the point in proposing the moratorium was to give people the opportunity to share their comments.
I will say that, Jake Abbott, who was representing the academy that night, said that one of his concerns was having kids every day walking past, the gun store was not helpful, he thought, toward educational goals for the academy.
We had a rifle team in high school.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I can't get my arms around it.
Oh, did he cancel that one?
Well, no, I can't PA, but I not only was a camper there and shot all the time, but I taught it as a counselor there as well. 22s, I mean.
Yeah.
I did biathlon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's something that I don't think we.
So this will go to the vote of the people in November.
That's the plan.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
If not
So-
sooner, if possible.
I mean,
That's-
So it's not a done deal at this
We're not
point,
making rules, we're proposing language and then,
and it will
the
go
town
back,
will
it
vote
will
on
go back to the town
I
people
mean,
to vote.
You
one
can
way or the
argue
other.
it both ways all day long. You can go get a gun out of Uncle Henry's immediately. You go to Mark, you go to
True.
my brother, if you will. You gotta wait 5 days. Again, some people believe in that, some people don't. It is what it is, and we just came to listen.
Yeah, that's, I think that what I was discussing with Lucas earlier was. To want to try and craft the most reasonable regulation because of everything that's come before the town voted. And so, you know, we want the moratorium and want at least the opportunity. And my takeaway was want the opportunity to consider this and have the conversation. Fine. Want to create something that's reasonable so that it's not so the community can have the conversation.
And does the 300 feet make you feel warm and fuzzy?
That's the question, I think.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Because I think
We don't know.
the conversation about the justification for it is maybe is really this, that's the more the select board, I think. It's there, the planning board is like, all right, you want an ordinance or something that says, that regulates this, that addresses this concern, we can try and put together some language that does that, and then whether it's reasonable is vote is the.
Peter, I think that LL Bean story is pretty, just
interesting.
goes to show where, it's state of Maine.
Yes.
Like high school, LL Bean, been there since 19.
21, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Correct.
No, I look, I understand it's a complex issue. I myself am a gun owner. And, but, I also, I can see the other side. I think, if we were in the 70s, right, where there weren't mass casualty events, I don't think anyone would care. And I think now that there are, for better or for worse, I mean, look, you and I both know that 99.9% of the AR-15s ever sold in the United States never commit a crime, right? But the 0.1% that do are really upsetting people.
Really triggers.
Yeah, and I mean, that's like it for better or worse. I mean, I don't open carry much except maybe during hunting season, And I'm not saying I don't conceal carry sometimes for my job, but it's a constant issue.
You were saying earlier, I have a compound bow. I
Sure.
do a whole month before
Hmm.
the guns. I enjoy that more, whatever. It is what it is. That compound bow isn't in that list.
Right.
And I can shoot that thing 300 feet all day long.
Sure,
Again,
silently, nearly,
Mhm.
completely.
yeah.
So.
I mean, these are good points, and there's gonna be an opportunity at the public hearing to raise them.
Yeah, it's the only thing I would like to be a part of, whether it's through you, it's just to know when these things are taking place.
Well,
So it's two things.
Yeah.
It's always gonna be posted on the town calendar on the website. In advance. It's gonna be posted around town. So
Paper.
it's gonna be in the paper. But if you wanna make sure you don't miss it, send an email to the town manager
Okay.
and he'll put you on his email distribution list.
And you'll
You'll
get,
just get all the updates.
you'll get the agenda for every meeting that's coming up.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's the best way to do it. Yeah.
And what I can tell you is, and it sounds like this is not how it's gonna play out, but last time I talked to Kevin, town manager. The select board, I imagine, will still discuss it on the 22nd, which is Monday. And then the plan was to have a public hearing at the planning board meeting on the 15th. It's certainly not gonna happen before that. It sounds like now, more likely it's gonna be the following, the third Thursday in September is probably when the public hearing will be. Definite, go to the town website, but at least right now, that's the.
Yeah, so
That's where-
like the 6th month, it went in on May 21st. Is that right? We got until November 21st. Is that right?
Seems,
That's right. Anyway,
but it was May. Well, yeah, that's.
we're gonna go, I mean, we're voting in November, that's, whatever. Can't remember the date, so
First Tuesday.
first Tuesday.
No seconds.
Yes, I think we're done. Michael's gonna give us a little report and we're out of here.
I got.
Good
I'm
luck
gonna-
with your day.
Thank you
Thank you
guys
very
for
much
coming
for
in.
sitting through all that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this was a long one.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
All right, so that's 5A, B, so C, planners report.
Yeah, I don't really have any news. That's new. I'm going to be away for 2 weeks, so
Vacation?
on vacation, so probably
Excellent.
not much is gonna get done. I mean,
You're taking your laptop.
I am taking my laptop.
Do not take your laptop on vacation.
I'm gonna try not to.
Phone on
use it.
silent. Don't, no.
I'll be in another country, so I'll have a different phone number at least for
Okay.
2 weeks, so like you won't.
Can't text you. Good.
But other than that, if you know anybody who might be interested or willing to be on the planning board,
I'm still working on.
yes.
Still working on
I'm still working. All right. Thank you very much.
Yep.
No one else from the public is here, so no public comments. Without objection, meeting adjourned, 8:55 PM.
Okay.
All right, this is a long one.